Okay, let's unpack this. We're going straight into a story that has absolutely captivated a nation. A case that's really been dubbed one of the most bizarre, most tragic incidents in recent memory. And it's just hit a critical point.
It really has. The tension has been building for so long.
Exactly. So today we're doing a crucial deep dive into, well, arguably the biggest crime story dominating headlines right now.
Yeah.
The long-awaited verdict in the Erin Patterson Mushroom Lady death cap poisoning trial.
The Mushroom Lady, yeah, that name stuck.
It did. And the immediate news, the headline that's echoing globally right now, is that Erin Patterson, 50 years old, has been found guilty of murder and attempted murder.
A huge development.
Huge. So our mission here in this deep dive is to go beyond just those breaking headlines. We want to peel back the layers, really try and understand the intricate tapestry of this case.
It's complex. So much to it.
Right. From that seemingly ordinary family meal that turned so fatal, to the evidence, the really meticulous, damning evidence that ultimately sealed her fate. And then the impact, the profound, far-reaching impact of this verdict.
On the community, absolutely. And maybe even wider questions about justice.
Exactly. We're here to help you get truly well-informed about this complex, this shocking, and frankly, deeply unsettling event. Think of this as a breaking news report. We're bringing you all the crucial details as they stand.
And what's truly fascinating here, maybe what explains why this story gripped not just Australia, but, global headlines so intensely, is that contrast. It's almost cinematic. Well, you have this quiet, rural family setting, right? And it becomes the stage for this alleged act of just profound malice. It's jarring.
It really is.
So this isn't just a legal outcome we're talking about. It's a deeply significant moment for that tight-knit South Gippsland community where it all happened.
Yeah, they've been through so much.
And it forces us, really, to confront some critical questions. Questions about trust, within families, within relationships, questions about public safety, and about how the justice system responds to crimes that are, well, this insidious.
Hidden in plain sight, almost.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've pulled together a really comprehensive set of resources. We've got the initial news reports, the ones that broke the story. We've got in-depth case study guides, the kind used for legal analysis.
Right.
And even internal briefing documents that detail the trial's progression minute by minute leading up to this verdict.
The real inside look.
We're aiming for that. We'll present this like a real-time breaking news report. First, hitting the immediate sort of earth-shattering impact of this verdict, and then, piece by piece, drilling down.
Into every detail, every piece of evidence.
Every human element that brought us to this devastating conclusion.
And drilling down is exactly what we'll do. Let's drive straight into the heart of this breaking news. The jury's decision. The big one.
The moment everyone was waiting for.
So the verdict itself, it was delivered just yesterday, late Tuesday afternoon. That's July 7th, 2025. The location, the Supreme Court of Victoria down in Melbourne.
A very somber setting for such news.
Absolutely. And this wasn't, a quick decision. The trial itself was this arduous, really emotionally charged marathon. It ran for nearly 7 intense weeks.
7 weeks of testimony, evidence, pressure.
Week after week, the prosecution meticulously laid out its case. The defense fought back with their arguments, and all the while the community, the nation really, just held its breath.
You could feel it, the anticipation.
Then after all that, the jury went out. They spent 5 full days deliberating, 5 agonizing days, you have to imagine, poring over every single shred of evidence, every witness statement.
But 5 days is a significant amount of time. It shows they really grappled with it.
It does. And the outcome? Unanimous.
Wow. Unanimous.
Every single juror agreed. Erin Patterson found guilty on 3 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder.
3 lives lost, 2 more targeted. The gravity is immense.
And the fact that it was unanimous, especially after 5 long days of deliberation, that really speaks volumes, doesn't it? About the weight, the clarity of the evidence they saw.
It strongly suggests they felt the evidence was overwhelming. It wasn't a borderline decision in their minds, clearly.
It feels like a definitive, resounding rejection of Patterson's whole narrative, her persistent claims that this was all just a terrible accident.
The jury just didn't buy it.
Through their collective decision, they unequivocally declared this was deliberate. This was premeditated.
A conscious act.
And apparently, as those multiple guilty verdicts were read out one by one in that hushed courtroom, sources inside said Patterson herself showed no visible reaction.
Really?
Nothing. That's the report. No tears, no gasps, just sort of unmoving, almost stoic. A blankness that, well, many people there found quite unsettling given the situation.
That lack of reaction can be interpreted in many ways, of course, but it certainly adds another layer to the whole picture.
It does. Now, connecting that unanimous verdict, coming after such a long, careful deliberation to the bigger picture, what does that tell us legally?
Well, legally, it's huge. A jury reaching unanimity on 5 counts, especially murder and attempted murder, after 5 days means they were convinced beyond any reasonable doubt. That's the standard.
Beyond reasonable doubt. It's a high bar.
A very high bar. And they clearly felt the prosecution met it. For them, the evidence didn't just suggest a tragic mistake, as Patterson claimed. It pointed, inexorably towards deliberate intent.
So it's a testament to the prosecution's case building.
Absolutely. To their ability to construct what the jury clearly saw as an airtight case. Now, looking ahead, the next big step is sentencing.
Right. When is that expected?
That's scheduled for next month. And given the severity, we're talking 3 counts of murder, 2 of attempted murder. The expectation among legal experts is pretty clear.
Multiple life sentences.
That's the strong consensus. Multiple life sentences.
What does that practically mean in the Australian system?
Yeah. It generally means exactly what it sounds like. Sentences ensuring the person spends the rest of their natural life in prison. While parole specifics can vary for crimes of this magnitude, you're looking at an incredibly long non-parole period, often decades.
So, effectively, no chance of release.
Very, very unlikely. It essentially means she will almost certainly die in custody. This kind of sentencing isn't just about punishment, it's a profound statement.
A statement from the justices.
Yes, about society's absolute abhorrence of this kind of calculated violence, especially violence targeting multiple people within what should be a safe, intimate setting, like a family meal.
Right. It communicates the gravity.
Exactly. The court imposes penalties matching the gravity of taking multiple lives, attempting to take others. It upholds the value of life, the value of trust. So this verdict, it closes a legal chapter.
But the story isn't over for those involved.
Not at all. The ramifications for the victims' families, for the survivor, for the whole community, they'll resonate for years, decades probably. It's a moment of legal accountability, yes, but it's wrapped in just profound sorrow.
Yeah, profound sorrow feels like the right description. And hearing those words, multiple life sentences, it just underscores the irreversible nature of what happened. To really get a grip on how we reach this verdict, we need to rewind. We need to go back to the start.
Back to the scene itself.
Exactly, back to where this unimaginable tragedy actually began. Let's try and reconstruct that deadly lunch. Okay, so here's where the story takes that really chilling turn. To understand the sheer weight of this verdict, we have to go back to the source. The fatal lunch itself?
The moment everything changed.
The date was Saturday, July 29th, 2023. The location, Erin Patterson's home. A fairly modest rural place in South Gippsland, Leongatha. That quiet, pretty area in Victoria.
Picturesque, usually, but now infamous.
Totally. You can almost, conjure the image. A seemingly normal winter Saturday afternoon, maybe a nice lunch planned, family getting together. It should have been safe, welcoming.
Just an ordinary gathering.
But that day, that house, that quiet town, forever scarred, forever marked by this tragedy that just, it almost defies belief.
Because at the center of it was the food.
The food. The centerpiece of this seemingly innocent gathering was a beef Wellington dish.
A classic, often celebratory dish.
Right. But this wasn't just any Wellington. The prosecution proved meticulously that it was allegedly laced with Amanita phalloides.
The death cap mushroom.
The death cap. And we need to be really clear here. This isn't just some mushroom that gives you a bad stomachache if you pick the wrong one.
No, not at all. This is serious.
The death cap is truly one of the deadliest fungi known to science. It contains these incredibly potent toxins called amatoxins.
Amatoxins. And they're particularly insidious, aren't they?
Exactly. That's the terrifying part. How they work, they are silent killers. They specifically target the liver.
So it's not an immediate reaction.
No, and that's crucial. Instead of causing instant dramatic symptoms, amatoxins work by basically stopping the liver from making the proteins it needs to repair itself. They shut it down from the inside.
Wow. So the body's main filter just fails.
It grinds to a halt. And this leads to a delayed onset of severe symptoms, usually 6 to 24 hours after eating them, which is key because it often masks the real cause initially.
People might think it's just food poisoning or the flu.
Precisely. Victims might first get really bad gastrointestinal issues, vomiting, diarrhea, terrible abdominal pain, easy to mistake for a bug. But then sometimes there's this deceptive period where they seem to get a bit better.
A false recovery. How cruel.
Incredibly cruel, because all the while the amatoxins are still destroying the liver. And then, days later, liver failure sets in, kidney failure often follows, and it can lead to multi-organ collapse.
An agonizing process.
Slow, agonizing, and almost always fatal if it's not treated very, very aggressively and quickly. That delayed, insidious nature made the initial diagnosis really tough and just amplified the horror for everyone watching the victims decline.
Which brings us to the people at that table. Who was actually there? Who ingested this?
That's the heartbreaking part. Identifying the victims, the human cost.
Right. So who were the individuals seated there unknowingly eating this meal? And what was that immediate devastating cost of those amatoxins?
The victims who tragically died, suffering through that awful decline in the days after the lunch. First, there was Don Patterson. He was Erin's former father-in-law.
Okay.
Then Gail Patterson, her former mother-in-law.
So her ex-husband's parents.
Correct. And also Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson.
3 people.
3 people. All 3 died within days. Their bodies just couldn't fight the relentless damage from the toxins. That prolonged suffering really highlights the insidious nature of this poison. It wasn't sudden. It was a gradual, agonizing shutdown.
Just horrific for them and for their families watching.
Unimaginable. But amidst all that darkness, there was one story of survival. Quite remarkable, really.
Ah, yes, Ian Wilkinson.
Ian Wilkinson, Heather's husband. He's a local Baptist pastor, apparently very well loved in the community.
A pillar of the community. You hear that phrase used a lot about him.
He also ate the poisoned dish. And he spent weeks, literally weeks, fighting for his life in critical condition.
An incredibly close call.
His survival was described as miraculous, a harrowing ordeal. And it culminated in a critical, life-saving intervention. He needed an emergency liver transplant.
Wow. A full transplant.
Yes. That complex, high-stakes surgery was absolutely essential. It replaced his fatally damaged liver. It literally saved him from the same fate as his wife, Gail, and Dawn.
And that survival, that need for a transplant, that must have been key to the charges.
Absolutely crucial. It directly informed those 2 counts of attempted murder against Patterson. It underscored the prosecution's argument of intent to cause deadly harm, even if, in his case, extraordinary medical efforts prevented death.
So the act was the same, the outcome different only because of the transplant.
That's the argument. And the sheer bizarre nature of it all, this ordinary lunch turning into a mass poisoning it, immediately ignited this firestorm. Speculation, scrutiny, not just locally but globally.
You couldn't escape the story. It was everywhere.
And those initial, somewhat confusing claims Patterson made, which we should get into, they only fueled the mystery and that intense public fascination. How could this happen in a private home? It really is one of those cases, isn't it? That combination of the domestic, the intimate setting, and just extreme lethality, it grabs you.
It absolutely does. It challenges fundamental assumptions.
Okay, let's unpack this next part then, the trial itself. With such a shocking incident at its core, the courtroom inevitably became this battleground. 2 profoundly different stories clashing head to head.
A real clash of narratives.
On one side, you had Erin Patterson's defense.
Sudfest.
From the very beginning, right through the trial, she consistently maintained her innocence.
Never wavered from that position, publicly at least.
Reports from the courtroom noted she repeatedly broke down in tears on the stand, visibly distressed, telling the court, often emotionally, "I never meant to harm anyone."
An emotional appeal to the jury.
And her initial and consistent explanation for the mushrooms? She claimed it was just a mix. Store-bought and dried mushrooms, she said she'd bought from an Asian grocery store.
Right, that was the initial story put forward, that it was some kind of tragic mistake with ingredients.
Exactly. That explanation aimed to paint her as, perhaps, a naive cook, caught in a catastrophic, horrifying accident, not malicious intent.
And that initial claim, it probably did contribute to that bizarre label the case got early on. It fueled speculation. How could this happen with shop-bought mushrooms unless something else is going on?
Right. Was it contamination?
Yeah.
A terrible mistake?
Yeah.
Or something else? The defense wanted the jury to believe it was a tragic accident involving a distraught woman.
But then you have the prosecution's case. And what's fascinating here, and ultimately what convinced the jury, is how meticulously they built their counter-argument.
Systematically taking apart her story.
Precisely. Turning that initial speculation and Patterson's own claims into solid, hard evidence that directly contradicted her narrative. Crown prosecutor Angela Taylor leading the case.
She presented a devastating case, by all accounts.
Absolutely. Clear, compelling. First, she tackled the issue of motive. Now, motive isn't strictly required for a conviction, but it helps paint the picture.
It answers the why question.
Exactly. The prosecution argued Patterson had a clear motive rooted in long-standing tensions and estrangement from her former in-laws.
Ah, so there was background there.
Yes. While the full details were likely presented carefully to the jury, reports suggest complex family dynamics, maybe financial issues, strained relationships after she separated from her husband, who was Don and Gail's son.
Okay, so not a happy family situation.
Apparently not. Presenting that plausible motive, even if it wasn't the whole case, it strengthens the narrative. It shifts the frame from accident towards deliberate, targeted action. The prosecution argued this motive, combined with the evidence, pointed to a calculated attempt to remove these specific people.
Okay, so motive was one pillar. What about the physical evidence?
And that's where the case became really, really strong for the prosecution. They didn't just rely on motive. They had damning physical and scientific evidence. Piece by piece, it dismantled her defense.
Like what? What were the key pieces?
One absolutely crucial piece, really damning, was the discovery of a food dehydrator.
A dehydrator. Why was that so important?
Forensic analysis suggested this was the equipment allegedly used to prepare the mushrooms. But the key wasn't just the dehydrator itself, it was where it was found.
Where?
It was found dumped at a local tip shortly after the incident.
Dumped at the tip?
Yes. Discovered by authorities at a waste disposal site. Now think about that. Why would an innocent person, if this was truly just a horrible accident, throw away a key piece of kitchen equipment right after the event?
It looks like trying to hide something, conceal evidence.
Exactly. That action just fundamentally undermines the claim of innocence, of accident. It strongly implies premeditation, consciousness of guilt, and attempt to cover tracks. The act of disposal itself became a powerful piece of evidence suggesting intent.
Oh, okay. Yes. What else?
Then the science, the toxicology reports. These were absolutely critical, the bedrock of the case.
What did they show?
Forensic pathologists, toxicologists, they unequivocally confirmed the presence of amatoxins, those lethal death cap compounds.
In the victims.
Yes, in the deceased victim's tissues. But crucially, also in tiny leftover food samples meticulously collected from the scene, from the beef Wellington itself.
So undeniable proofs the poison was in the food they ate.
Undeniable. Unimpeachable scientific proof. It linked the poison directly to the meal and confirmed it was the cause of death and illness. No room for doubt there.
Okay. Motive, the dehydrator, the toxicology.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yes. The forensic expert testimony. This went beyond just identifying the poison. It looked at how it was likely prepared and served.
How can they tell that?
Well, experts testified that the concentration and preparation method indicated a deliberate act, not a tragic mistake.
How so? What's the difference?
Think about it. If death caps were just accidentally mixed in, maybe mistaken for edible ones, the concentration might be uneven. Maybe bits of mushroom fiber would be obvious.
Right. Haphazard.
But the analysis suggested something different here. It suggests the mushrooms had been processed, maybe dried, rehydrated, finely chopped, even pulverized. Processed in a way to extract maximum toxicity and ensure it was spread evenly, lethally throughout that rich beef Wellington.
Making it harder to detect and more potent.
Precisely. That kind of meticulous processing is highly unusual if you're just innocently adding store-bought and dried mushrooms. It suggests a knowledge of the mushroom's danger and a deliberate effort to weaponize them, essentially.
It's chilling.
It is. So you put it all together, the compelling motive, the deliberate disposal of the dehydrator, the irrefutable toxicology confirming the specific poison in the food and victims, and then this detailed forensic analysis showing deliberate preparation.
It paints a very clear picture for the jury.
An overwhelming picture, it seems. It systematically dismantled every part of Patterson's defense, and that's what led, inevitably, to those unanimous guilty verdicts.
It's just incredible how all those pieces fit together. The dehydrator, the science, the preparation method. It builds such an undeniable case.
It really shows the power of meticulous investigation and forensic science. It moved beyond speculation into hard facts.
Yeah. Leaves you with that chilling thought. You might try to hide the tools, but the poison itself tells the story. So the verdict is in, the legal process moves to sentencing. But what does this all mean beyond the courtroom? for everyone else, this case wasn't just legal drama. Its echoes are being felt much wider.
Oh, absolutely. Far and wide.
From the very start, from that first unbelievable headline family lunch, deadly poison, this mushroom lady case just captivated everyone, not just Australia, but globally. There was this almost morbid fascination.
It tapped into something primal, I think. Fear, maybe. Betrayal.
Could be. It wasn't just another crime story from a small town. It resonated because it felt so unsettlingly unique. That idea of profound malice hiding in the safest place imaginable, a family meal at home.
It challenges your fundamental assumptions about safety, about trust. Who can you trust if not family sharing food?
Exactly. It strikes a nerve. Makes you wonder about hidden dangers in ordinary life.
Indeed. And if we connect that public fascination to the bigger picture, the case has definitely sparked some crucial conversations that go way beyond the legal outcome.
Like what, for example?
Well, firstly, this whole horrifying incident has led to renewed, really urgent calls for stricter regulations around wild mushroom foraging and much more public awareness.
Because death caps look like other mushrooms.
Exactly. Amanita phalloides, the death cap, it's deceptively ordinary looking. It can easily be mistaken for edible types like certain straw mushrooms or field mushrooms. And unfortunately, it grows quite commonly in places like Victoria.
So the risk is real for foragers.
Immense risk. Without absolute expert identification, picking wild mushrooms is playing Russian roulette, basically. This case became this horrifying, tangible example of why you need experts, why, if in doubt, throw it out, isn't just advice, it's potentially life-saving.
So more warnings, more education campaigns.
Yes, definitely seeing an uptick. Government agencies, community groups pushing out warnings, ID guides, really hammering home the risks. There's a much sharper awareness now that a simple mistake, or as the verdict implies here, deliberate use can have these nightmare consequences. They're trying to prevent this specific type of tragedy from happening again.
Makes sense. What about the community? South Gippsland, how are they reacting?
That's the second point. For the South Gippsland community, where this all unfolded, where Dawn, Gail, and Heather were known and loved, the verdict brought this really complex mix of emotions.
Understandably.
They're still grieving, deeply. These were neighbors, friends, church members, so local reports describe the reaction as this profound mix of relief and sorrow.
Relief that there's accountability.
Yes, relief that justice, after such a long and painful wait, has been served. A sense that the person responsible is being held accountable by the system, maybe some legal closure, allowing them to start processing it differently.
But sorrow because nothing changes the loss.
Exactly. That relief is just soaked in sorrow, because no verdict brings back the lives lost. The community is still healing, dealing with immense grief, immense trauma. This verdict is a step, a crucial legal step, but it's definitely not the end of their journey.
A long road ahead for them.
A very long road. And perhaps no one represents that complex emotional reality better than the survivor, Ian Wilkinson.
His statement outside court was very moving.
It really was. Delivered with such quiet dignity right after the verdict. He just said, simply, "Nothing can bring back Gail, Dawn, or Heather, but today there is some measure of justice. I hope we can all begin to heal."
Wow, that captures it perfectly.
It does. It powerfully highlights the survivor's perspective, that inescapable pain of loss, but also that cautious, fragile hope that accountability might somehow help pave that incredibly long, hard road towards healing. Not just for him, but for everyone touched by this.
A reminder of the real people, the real grief behind the headlines.
Absolutely. Behind the legal arguments, the science, there's just immense human suffering, life-altering trauma, all stemming from one incredibly malicious act.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive into the Mushroom Lady verdict, it's shown us not just a legal outcome, but, well, a truly complex human tragedy. A chilling crime that really ripped through the veneer of normal domestic life. And also a testament to the incredibly meticulous work of the police, the forensic teams, the prosecution.
Their work was crucial in piecing it all together.
To reiterate the core facts one last time, Erin Patterson, found guilty. 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder. All linked back to that beef Wellington dish she prepared, intentionally laced with deadly death cap mushrooms.
And what's truly fascinating here, maybe deeply unsettling is the better word, is how something so seemingly mundane, even cherished, preparing a meal, sharing food, hospitality, could become the setting for such calculated malice, such devastating consequences.
It really makes you think.
It does, and it raises this important, maybe lingering question for all of us, for you listening. In our world now, we're so connected, information about everything, even obscure poisons, is just out there. And trust, especially in our closest circles, can be so violently shattered. So how do we actually protect ourselves? How do we protect our communities from threats that can literally hide in plain sight, even in our own kitchens, disguised as something as simple as a mushroom?
A chilling thought to end on.
It's a reminder, isn't it, that sometimes the greatest dangers aren't lurking in the shadows or the unknown. Sometimes they're right there in the seemingly safe corners of our everyday lives. It forces you to think about trust, about those unseen dangers, and about the path of justice, often painful but enduring, even when faced with something truly unspeakable.